welcome back to my channel, everybody. Today we're going to go over my April wrap-up and May's TBR. It is May. It is the last month of spring before we get into the scorching summer. I live in South Florida and it's already 85, 90 degrees here. We're already burning up down here. It's going to be a hot summer, but I'm going to cling to my flowers a little bit longer. So let's dive into my April wrap-up. But before we get started, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons, ring the notification bell so you can get notified about all of my new videos. Lately, I've been doing more short form content where I've been doing like 3-minute review videos for each book that I read. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, be sure you click the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so that you get notified of all those videos when they're posted. In the month of April, I had a really solid reading month. There were only 5 days out of the month that I didn't get to read, so I was pretty much reading the whole time, every spare moment I had, and I was able to complete 6 books for April. In the month of April, I read Bunny by Mona Awad, Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This is the first book in the Empyrean series. Hysterical by Elissa Bassist. The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward, The Woman in Me by Britney Spears, and The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Chbosky. I've also started 3 more books that'll count towards my May reading, but we'll talk about that later. Now let's look at the books I read in April a little closer. Spoiler alert for any and all of these books. I try not to give away the main plot points or any of the twist of the books, but if you want to go into a book blind, then maybe skip over that particular book. All of my videos are chaptered for you so you could easily skip ahead when needed. Bunny by Mona Awad is a pink horror novel that explores Ivy League education and female friendships through a satirical lens. And oh, what a bonkers-ass book this was. Bunny was my choice for the Buzzwordathon and Coverathon challenge, for animal being both prompts, something on the cover and in the title relating to an animal. In Bunny, our main character, Samantha, is an alternative, edgy young woman who attends a prestigious grad school where she is studying artistic writing. Samantha is invited to a smut lounge party with a clique of peers she refers to as the Bunnies. Now, this group of women is weirdly obsessed with each other. They're always together, always praising each other, always hugging each other, and always calling each other Bunny. These women dress as caricatures of their personalities, which just adds to the weirdness. Samantha has had several classes with this group of women, but has always been on the outside of their group. And despite the advice of her best friend Ava, Samantha attends the smut lounge party, and that is when it really starts to get weird. What Bunny does really well is not take itself seriously. This premise is so out of this world bonkers that you just have to suspend your belief to go along for the ride to have a good time. If you expect anything to be a straight line in this book, you're walking the incorrect line. This book has stuck in my mind like a push pin in a cork board. I read this book a month ago and I still am thinking about it. I still think about the bunnies and the magic and the weirdness that is the bunnies, like both bunnies, if you know what I'm talking about. It's just, it won't leave my mind how odd this book was and how up my alley this kind of book is. This was the only book by Mona Awad that I've read, and I've since ordered more because this is my brand of weird feminine horror, pink horror, if you will. This book is kind of a blend of Mean Girls mixed with dark academia mixed with Mayfly. It was just its own cocktail of crazy. Bunny for me was a pure popcorn read, and I rated it 4 stars. It was really entertaining. If a book can entertain me, it will almost always rate higher than maybe it should have. But that's why I read, is for entertainment. I don't read because I'm a literary scholar. I read because I'm an average consumer. So an entertainment book is always going to be top tier for me. Would I recommend Bunny? If you take a lot of drugs, this book is probably for you. If you don't take enough drugs, then you might not enjoy it. But I really did. This is not a straightforward story. It's curvy and weird and out there, so if you can have fun with a concept like that, then this book is your gal. Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros is the first book in the Empyrean series. This is an incredibly popular romantasy book that you probably read before me, but I'm going to do this anyway. I read Fourth Wing for two different prompts, one being from my library card game for a romance published after 2020, and the other prompt being from the TBR Trail the Quest game played with Kim from Expedition Through Pages and Amy from A-Star Reads. And the prompt for that was a book with sign language representation. I really wanted to be a hater of this book because of the different reviews I've seen on the internet, but I was not a hater, I was a lover. In Fourth Wing, our main character is Violet Sorengale, who enters Dragon War College, for lack of a better term. Violet had trained her entire life to be a scribe like her father, but after his death, her mother, a general, orders Violet to become a dragon rider instead. Which is a wild thing considering the death rate of those who take the dragon rider's path. It's worth noting that Violet has a disability where her bones and joints are weak and snap all the time, which is not the best situation you want to find yourself in when you're at Dragon War College. Upon arriving at Dragon War College, Violet meets Xaden, the son of a leader of the failed rebellion. As punishment for the rebellion, the children of the rebels were branded, forced to watch their parents' execution, and are then conscripted to be dragon riders. And because of this lovely family dynamic, Violet is told by her sister to stay away from Xaden Ryerson, that he will want to kill her. This book very much falls into the wheelhouse of like Divergent and The Hunger Games and other incredibly popular series of the late 2000s and 2010s, and this book got me by the nostalgia so hard. Teenage me would have rated this book 5 stars without fail, but adult me needs to remain at least a little bit objective, so I rated Fourth Wing 3.5 stars. Fourth Wing is one of those books that's popular because it's fun, not because it's good. The characters were not great, they were everything we've ever seen before, the writing was bad, the plot was predictable, but I still had a really good time. This book was really entertaining and it follows a formula that's very familiar, that's very comforting, and sometimes that's really all you need in a book. And I'm a sucker for dragons, and this book is filled with them, including like what I envision as a My Little Pony dragon, and that was it for me. Andersen is my gem. I'll be putting Fourth Wing on my list of guilty pleasure books right next to Twilight. Andersen has my heart, she's gonna stay there forever, and I will be continuing the series. Just really surprised that I like this book as much as I did, which is kind of the theme of the month. Hysterical, a memoir by Elissa Bassist, is a memoir/collection of essays that focuses on women's health and feminism. Hysterical starts out with Elissa finding herself in chronic pain and going through the loop of doctor's appointment after doctor's appointment, after specialist after specialist, after invasive procedures and blood work and testing, to find that she has really no answers in her medical quest, which I think is something a lot of us can relate to, just going through the medical system to find yourself just where you started, back at the beginning on a bunch of prescription drugs with no answers. Hysterical falls into a category of book that I refer to as my vagina books. These are books that focus on women's studies, women's health, women experiences. And if you're interested in this kind of book, I have a tag on my Goodreads that I kind of collect these books on a shelf, if you will, both fiction and nonfiction. So if women's studies is something you're interested in, follow me on Goodreads and go ahead and click that vagina book tag to find some more recommendations in this genre. Now, when I read Hysterical, I listened to it on audiobook, which is voiced by Elissa herself, and she's quite funny. There's a lot of funny dialogue in the book. There's a lot of humor in her book, which is really great when getting into a subject that some people might be uncomfortable with. Me personally can relate to Elissa's situation so much. I've been through the medical ringer for years with no answers, and even though I'm in constant pain, like Elissa found herself in constant pain, we got the same kind of like prescription of just relax, just take a bath. Like they don't treat women's illnesses, and that is such a frustrating fact of life in the world. And Elissa references many other books on this particular subject, and I'm going to be exploring all of them. So while I wasn't originally sure how I felt about Hysterical, overall I believe it was a good gateway book, if you will, into women's health. I rated Hysterical 4 stars. The reason it wasn't a 5-star read for me is because it wasn't exactly what I thought I was going to be getting. I thought I was really going to be getting Elissa's medical experience, but it is that for about the first third of the book, and then it goes into more of a collective essay situation of different female experiences. She touches on the Me Too movement, women in the workplace, women's gender roles, those kind of things. But it does all come back full circle to be something of an answer of her own diagnosis. So it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, but it does bring itself around pretty well. And I would recommend this to anybody who's interested in women's health. The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Awad is a mystery thriller, and what a tricky little mystery it was. I read The Last House on Needless Street for a prompt for my library card game being a mystery and a 6 or more word title, and also as a prompt for the quest game, and that would be a green cover with a light source. In The Last House on Needless Street, the mystery of a little girl who went missing at the lake one summer is explored in a unique way. We have 3 primary POVs: Ted, the suspect, Dee, the sister of the missing girl, and Olivia, Ted's cat. Yes, his cat. Ted is living his recluse, weirdo life, looking forward to visits with his daughter Lauren, trying to get a date online, going to therapy, and drinking like a fish, when someone moves into the house next door. The house had been vacant for years and years. This person is Dee. Dee is the sister of the little girl who went missing, and she is searching for her sister Lulu, and believes Ted to be the person who took her because of a newspaper photograph from when the search for Lulu began. Dee's entire life revolves around stalking Ted at this point. She has been searching for Lulu for years and is convinced that Lulu is in Ted's house. And in the meantime, Olivia, the cat, is a God-fearing cat who believes she is doing the Lord's work by keeping Ted company. These narrators are unreliable, something awful. I was constantly questioning their existence, never had the timeline of the story pinned down, and wondered if any of this was happening at all. I feel like every time I went left, this book went right, and I was constantly asking myself, what the fuck did I just read? When I read mysteries, I pride myself on being able to guess the ending of the story, and to my credit, I had a little bit of this figured out, but the rest I absolutely did not see coming. And even though I really did enjoy this book, I gave it 4.25 stars. At some points, it did feel like it was dragging just watching Ted's days pass by. He isn't an interesting man, which does fit right into his character of being an inconspicuous creep, but he is still not the most interesting character to follow. Olivia the cat was by far the most interesting character in this book. I never thought I'd love reading a cat's inner monologue so much, but here we are. I look forward to reading more from Catriona Awad. This was my first book from her that I've read, but I've since ordered more. She is quite the backlist for me to dive into, and I would recommend this book with caution. So this book makes you spend time in uncomfortable places. Check your trigger warnings if you need to, but if you enjoy a mystery that turns itself inside out and upside down, then you should probably give this one a try. The Woman in Me is Britney Spears' memoir. I read this on a whim just out of sheer curiosity. It had been sitting in my Spotify library forever, and I finally decided to listen to it. Britney Spears is a cultural icon. She was the it girl of the 2000s. I don't listen to Britney's music much. I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily a fan, although I 100% had a Britney Spears doll when I was like 8 years old. I grew up when she was coming into the height of her fame. She was everywhere, and it was impossible not to know who she was. I was also a teenager when her breakdowns happened in a very public way. And from that perspective, I think I was on the wrong side of history after reading her book. In The Woman in Me, from childhood to present, Britney tells her story. Most of what I know about Britney has come from the headlines, but this book was a raw take on her experience. When reading this book, it felt like Britney wanted to talk to us, and because of that, the writing style of the book works for me. It isn't the most refined or esteemed, but Britney never said she was. And I know it was written by a ghostwriter, but it still feels like it came from Britney. Even if she just said all these things and someone else wrote them down, it did feel really genuine. I knew going into this book that it would be sad because of cultural osmosis. Again, her story is just impossible to escape. I didn't realize that I was going to be so damn angry on her behalf. I knew about the conservatorship and I knew it was wrong and I knew I didn't like it, but I didn't know just how deep the rabbit hole was going to go. As a woman, as a human being, I feel for Britney. And Britney is a better woman than me. How Britney hasn't committed at least one murder yet is beyond me, because I would not have been so merciful if I were her. Bravo, madam. Her dad especially, but also her mom, her sister, her brother, Justin Timberlake, Kevin Federline, her agents, her lawyers, and the state of California can all kick rocks. I hope Britney's in the stage of her life where she's healing and enjoying herself, and if that means that she does crazy little dances on TikTok because they make her happy, then maybe I'll just start watching them. I rated The Woman in Me 3.5 stars. I liked this book much more than I thought I was going to, and I do recommend it if you enjoy memoirs, celebrity stories, or are just in the mood for a sad story, because it really is. The audiobook for The Woman in Me is under 6 hours, so you could easily binge this in an afternoon if you wanted to. The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Chbosky is a young adult modern classic literary fiction coming-of-age story. It's also a widely banned book. I read The Perks of Being a Wallflower as a prompt from my library card game, being for something from my reading list, and this was on my 40 by 40 list, and also with a yellow cover. And I also included this in my The Quest prompts for a disliked trope, and that trope was bury your gaze, but it ended up not turning up in this book. AI lied to me. I ChatGPT'd books with the bury your gaze trope in it, and it said this one had it, but it definitely didn't. The Perks of Being a Wallflower tackles heavy themes that young people come into contact with in their regular life, right? Like mental health, sexuality, peer pressure, finding your place in your school and in your environment, those kind of things. In The Perks of Being a Wallflower, a boy named Charlie writes letters to an anonymous person detailing his life in his freshman year of high school. Charlie is a gifted student, but is grappling with quite a bit of trauma, both from his childhood and the recent death of his best friend. Charlie makes it a priority in his freshman year to participate and begins doing so by attending a school football game where he befriends Patrick and Sam, who are step-siblings. Charlie integrates into Patrick and Sam's friend group, he comes to feel accepted, and over the course of the book, he falls in love with Sam. This book is filled with teenage parties and shenanigans, just normal teenage life, but also takes a deep look at how trauma can affect a person. Now, I'm ready for the backlash when I say this, but I rated Perks 3 stars. And don't get angry with me. I think this book is very good. I just don't think I'm the target audience for it. I would have appreciated this book much more had I read it in high school, but in my 30s, it just doesn't hit me the same as I think it would have if I had read it when I was 15. And speaking of high schools, this book is probably banned in your local high school for sexually explicit content. Yes, there is sexual content in this book, but in the context present in the book, it could not be further from smut or spice. The sexual content in this book is traumatic for Charlie, and it helps him realize his own trauma and get help for his trauma. I don't think this book is inappropriate for people who are 16 years old or older, but I'm not a parent, just a person who read anything I wanted as a teenager. I personally don't think this book is harmful. And who would I recommend this book to? Teenagers, young adults, people 16 to 20 years old. I think they would benefit the most from reading this book, but I don't think it is a bad read as an adult either, and I'm glad I read it. It's a modern classic for a reason. So my best book of April was The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward, and sadly my worst book was The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Chbosky. But I did enjoy all of the books I read this month, so let's not take the word worst too seriously. Let's start off May's TBR with the Buzz Wordathon and cover challenge from Books and Lala. For the month of May, the buzzword is two or two, and for the cover challenge, the prompt is eyes. So I couldn't find a book that overlapped and had both of these in one book, so I will be reading two separate books for these challenges. And for the prompt of two or two, I'll be reading A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. And for the cover portion of the challenge, where the buzzword is eyes on the cover, I am going to be reading Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. Moving on to my library card prompts that I fit into my May TBR this month, you're going to notice some overlaps here. I try to consolidate and condense my reading challenges and reading games as much as possible so I don't overwhelm myself with the amount of books that I need to read each month. The books that I managed to work in for my library card game for this month are A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher, Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus, Hans Christian Andersen's Fairy Tales, and Blood and Gold by Anne Rice. This is the 8th book in the Vampire Chronicles series, and it probably looks familiar because I just keep putting this back on my TBR. Now let's jump into the quest. This is a competitive TBR game played between the captains of our teams, Kim from Expedition Through Pages and Amy from A-Star Reads. Kim leads the team of the Asarai, and Amy leads the team of the Centaurs, which I am on the Centaurs team. And we won the previous round, and as a reward have some really tricky prompts this month. Let me tell you what they are. Our first prompt was a randomized continent spinner wheel, and we landed on Asia. That is to read a book that is either set in Asia or written by an Asian author. And for this, I'm going to be reading The Snowflower and the Secret Fan by Lisa C. For our second prompt, we landed on a challenge square and won the challenge against the other team, resulting in a free pick. And for this, I fit in Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. For our third prompt, we landed on a hard prompt and got Featuring a Firefighter. And for this, I really was stumped. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to do this prompt. The majority of my teammates are reading Firefighter Smut. I saw a few reading Fahrenheit 451, but then something else caught my attention from one of my teammates who was reading The Only Plane in the Sky, An Oral History of 9/11 by Garrett M. Graff. So I did have this on my Spotify library, so I've already started this one. So far, it's really good. It's a 45-person cast audiobook. The production is incredible. It is really hard to listen to, though. I didn't think Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee by Dee Brown could be topped for the most heartbreaking book I've ever listened to or read, but I think The Only Plane in the Sky might just take that top spot of heartbreaking book, mostly because this happened in my lifetime. I was 8 years old. When it happened, I hadn't even turned 9 yet. I was in the 4th grade, and I remember being terrified. So this book just hits me in my core. Our fourth prompt was an easy one, and that is to read a paperback. And for this, I'll be reading Hans Christian Andersen's Fairy Tales. I've already started this book as well. I'm reading one fairy tale a day. This collection has 12 fairy tales in it, and so far so good. Our fifth prompt landed us in deep trouble when we had to read a book over 1,000 pages. And we Centaurs, we take this challenge on head first. I am going to be reading Drums of Autumn by Diana Gabaldon. This is the 4th book in the Outlander series. I have a mass market paperback copy of this book, which is 1,070 pages, and I've already started this book. I'm about 240 pages in. And finally, our 6th prompt got us a book related to music, and for this I will be reading Blood and Gold by Anne Rice, the 8th book in the Vampire Chronicles series. This is Marius's story, but if you've read any Vampire Chronicle books or have seen the movie The Queen of the Damned, then you'll know that Lestat, the Brat Prince, is a musician, and it's because of his music that Akasha is risen from her statuesque form. Marius is the guardian of Ankhil and Akasha. So when he plays Lestat's music, Akasha rises. That at some point will come up in this book because you cannot tell Marius' story without bringing up Akasha's rise. Or at least I hope so. Hopefully we don't have a repeat like I had last month reading a book that didn't pertain to the prompt, thus I couldn't count it. And that's everything I'm planning to read in May. Thank you so much for joining me today. Good luck, Centaurs. Good luck, Aserai. I look forward to meeting up with you at the end of May, and I look forward to meeting you all back right here. Thank you so much for watching. Click the like, subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!